Fantastic.
Alrighty. So I read Maria sent me like a kind of a breakdown like of all the things that you're kind of dealing with. I know it seems like 20 different things, but they're actually it's like broken down as like three main things, to be honest.
Okay.
Okay. So it makes life a lot more simpler. So go ahead and tell me, just elaborate a bit more on, what you're dealing with, and of course, like what you want to achieve and all that.
Yeah, so this is Goose. This is pretty normal. If he's not in my lap, then he's barking at the window. So he's usually with me quite a bit. But yeah, he is a rescue. We think he's about 6 to 7 years old. I started fostering him in early August through a rescue group from the suburbs. They're called Pet Profile Rescue. Um, I had fostered through Paws before and been registered to foster with other programs where they had like resources about training and stuff like that. So I relied on those a little bit, and then as soon as I adopted him, those resources were no longer available. And I officially adopted him about 3 weeks into fostering him. So I think he made himself very comfortable early on, but still took some time for him to form kind of his habits and show get to be like as comfortable as possible in this environment. They did find him in Chicago, so he is a city dog as far as we know, and familiar with the city in winter and all of that. But yeah, he is since then, like, he has made himself comfortable like on the couch and in my bed, which I know is a big no-no. So as soon as like I start to learn like all of the different things that we need to train, that will definitely switch to his crate. We have been doing some crate training. I met with a trainer back in October virtually, and there are some great tips, some things that like worked really well. They focused on positive reinforcement. Because as growing up, I always had dogs, and my family kind of trained them with a lot of discipline. So when I became a dog parent, I really wanted to kind of restructure that and go more the positive reinforcement route. After doing a lot of research, like through your page and like other, trainers throughout the country, I know that like a balanced is probably like a better route for certain dogs. A Goose in particular, he definitely responds really well to positive reinforcement, but for some things where he's stubborn, it could be positive, it could be discipline, it could be anything, and he doesn't. He just kind of does what he wants. So I feel like the balanced approach is really what I'm looking for with him, and just I imagine that I'll probably be fostering dogs in the future. So it'll be good for me to like learn too
Sure.
in general. So yeah, we had a trainer back in October. It was very much positive reinforcement focused. Some of those the I guess tasks that she gave me worked, but it just felt very impersonal for Goose and like our environment. I live in a 1-bedroom condo. I do have a backyard, but just some things weren't like realistic in the space that we have.
Right.
So yeah, I just from there I wanted to just do a little bit more research on finding like the right fit for him and like the best trainer for us. So that's
Okay.
where we're at now.
All right. Um, yeah, I think from what I read, it seemed just like a lot of barking, leash pulling. If is there leash reactivity, like barking at dogs or people?
Early on, it was very much so like
Okay.
I think as he was getting adjusted to the new environment, he's gotten a lot better. I've used, um, you know, treats to keep him distracted. But even then, that's kind of started to fall off where he's just gotten a lot better about not being very reactive. But when he is high energy or if he sees a dog, um, like generally like any kind of big dogs like pit bulls or anyone that like might look intimidating for him, he gets a little reactive. But He's gotten a lot better about it, especially as much as I like try to keep his energy down on
Mhm.
our walks. He's a lot better about it.
What do you walk them on?
So I was using a harness and just like a standard leash. I saw from your videos that a harness is not a good idea. So in the past week, we've started to just do the collar. Um, and he's been fine with that. He does, if he gets really excited and I'm trying to like pull him away from a situation, he tries to like slip out of his collar,
Mhm.
even though it's like tight around him. But like that is one thing is when I like in the first few months that I had him, he had gotten out of like 5 different backyards. So my backyard, my mom's, my aunt, uncle's, and they all had like heavily fenced yards. And he just managed to find like the one spot. So he's definitely a little bit of an escape artist. So I can tell that like he's gotten out of collars before. So
Mhm.
that's his go-to move when we're not on a harness.
Sure, he backs off. Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, when he backs up, does the collar look like it will slip off, or do you have it snug enough that he can't?
Um, Now I have it snug enough. Like I think one day I quickly put the collar on and I hadn't put it and he got off. But yeah, I've definitely learned my lesson and made sure that it's snug enough that it doesn't
Yeah.
slip off.
Do you have a flat buckle or do you have a snap buckle collar?
Snap buckle.
Okay. So just so you know, snap buckles, one, they can break. The snap itself. In 2020, I had like 5 dogs break out of snap buckles.
Okay.
The other thing is that because you know with the snap buckle, you have to like kind of weave it through to tighten it
Mhm.
up and stuff. Is over time they tend to just loosen up, so you're constantly tightening them up. But then, like within the walk, if he's backing up, that can actually cause it to loosen again.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
um,
That was happening with one of his harnesses. So I like had to get like the Velcro ones, but
yeah. So usually
okay.
I tell people get a flat buckle. It's the most secure. Like there's no undoing that. You know, that's like a belt buckle.
Yeah.
Um, and then of course addressing that issue of resistance and stuff will also fix the problem, so he's not trying to slip out. But definitely something to think about would be just investing in a snap buckle. Nothing fancy, just like $8-12 or something.
Okay.
That's what we use here at the facility. Whenever working with dogs, if they're on a snap buckle, we have a number of flat buckles here that we just swap them out so we don't have to deal with that problem.
Okay. Perfect.
um, so the escape artist thing, yeah, it's crazy how intuitive dogs are. They will find that weakness, you know, and once they find it, good luck.
Yeah.
They'll keep going back to it. Once they learn how to get out, they just kind of keep going, unless you're able to like remedy that problem by securing it more, or you're just outside being mindful of them and watching them and stuff. So I'm assuming you did research on us, or at least like watched videos or something. Okay,
Yeah.
so you're aware we use e-collar and prong collar.
Hmm.
Okay. So when it comes to training, because as you're aware, there's a number of different approaches. There's obviously the positive reinforcement, gentle leader, harness, prong collar, slip chain, e-collar, and everything in between. Um, and um, the reason why I do remote collar, like so, all my dogs that I personally train that are 6 months and older, I only train on e-collar. Okay,
Okay.
and the reason is, um, it's the best method. It gets me as close to 100% as I could possibly get with anybody, and no other tool can guarantee that. Positive reinforcement, prong collar, slip chain, even if it's a balance trainer, if they're not using e-collar, once you remove the leash, there is no guarantee that you have control over your dog. Okay, because you with the prong, slip chain, or gentle leader, you have a means of physical reinforcement, right? You have the leash. If the dog is off leash and you have food, well, what if whatever it is you're trying to, retrieve the dog from is greater than the value of your food, right? So e-collar is the only tool that gets me contact and the means to reinforce something on or off leash. Um, and it's kind of like if you go to the doctor and you have a condition and they tell you, well, we have 3 approaches. This approach has a 5% chance of success. This approach has a 30% chance of success, and this approach has a 95% chance of success. Which one are you going to pick?
Of course, the
Yeah,
95%.
95, right? So like, because people, because there's a lot of drama in the dog training world. I don't know if you ever stumbled upon that yet, with positive versus balanced trainers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because their argument is like, well, our dogs that we train have to be on the e-collars or whatever. And then the argument goes right back where we're like, well, you need your food, except your food at some point is not going to work.
It's a tool. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So the other thing is, people have a misconception about e-collar because of the word shock, because that's it. Like it's more popularly known as shock. And that word comes from, the positive reinforcement side, trying to deter people from using those tools. So shock, obviously, nobody wants to electrocute their dog, which you're not electrocuting your dog. The other thing is, older, or when e-collars first came out, they had like 5 levels, and the ones that we use have 127 levels. And the difference is, 5 and 127 are the same, but I have 122 more divisions now. So before, the output per 1, 2, 3, 4 in those levels was greater. So your dog was either yelping at 3 or not listening at 2.
Gotcha.
So you're stuck. But here I can go 40, 44, 45, 42, 49. I can really fine tune it. So I can, how do you say, temper it to the dog's personality type, right?
Yeah.
And also, most training, it was applied as a punisher, meaning like, they would train the dogs first using food, and then they would bring in the e-collar or the prong collar. And if you said sit, for example, and the dog didn't comply, you would zap them, right? So that's a punisher. And the way we train now, because training has come a long way, is we use what's called pressure work. Are you familiar with pressure work?
I'm not.
Okay. Have you ever pulled up and pushed down on Goose to make him sit?
Yes.
Okay, that's pressure, right? That's physical pressure. And the moment he sat, what did you do?
I'd say like I back away, or like say good,
You say
tell him
good,
no.
and I'm assuming you let go, right? You
Yeah,
stopped
like a
pushing
yeah.
down because he did what you wanted,
Yeah.
right? So that's pressure work. Pressure on when we need the dog to do something, pressure off once they comply. Okay. So, and there's different forms of pressure. We have physical pressure, leash pressure, spatial pressure, like e-collar pressure. There's different. So actually, an example in human terms would be, do you drive?
I do.
You do? Have you been
I
on the
don't personally
expressway?
have a car, but I know how to drive.
You know how to drive, yeah. Have you ever experienced like where you're driving and then someone's really close to your bumper, right, on
Yes.
the expressway? And so what's happening is they're doing that to make you feel uncomfortable, right? That's spatial pressure. So you either don't do anything, you switch lanes, you speed up, or in some cases people hit the brakes, right?
Hmm.
But in each one of those responses, it's a response to pressure. Oh, this person's driving really close to me. I don't like it. What am I going to do next? Right.
Gotcha.
Growing
Yeah.
up, we had peer pressure, right? Peer pressure, making you feel uncomfortable or something to motivate you to do something, right?
Gotcha. Yep.
So pressure comes in many forms, and pressure is a very good form of communication with dogs because that's how they communicate with each other. They use pressure all the time. So, like, have you ever seen dogs kind of posture each other? That's pressure. That's confrontational pressure.
Yeah.
So e-collar, again, is a form of pressure, and we teach the dog how it turns on and how it turns off. So instead of teaching sit and then punishing the dog for not sitting, we use the pressure of the e-collar to actually mold the sit. Okay,
Got it.
so it would look very similar. I pull up on the leash, I lightly press down on the butt, and I'm tapping on my e-collar. And I have to find the number that um, incentivizes your dog to think, I don't like this. What do I do to get it to stop? Right. and
Mhm.
I'm guiding him using my, my hands, and the e-collar is going off. And then finally he sits. Everything stops. My hands go away. The e-collar turns off, and the dog goes, "Oh, well, that's weird. I felt this uncomfortable feeling, but when I put my butt down, it went away." Right. And then he
Yeah.
gets up, and I pull up, and I keep repeating, and he's like, "Hey, it came back." So then he starts thinking, "Oh, if I don't want this thing to turn on, I just put my butt down and I don't move." Right.
Yeah.
And we use it to shape everything. So even when we get dogs that are already trained, and I get dogs that are already trained on e-collar all the time, they just weren't trained, in my opinion, correctly. Because I can tell. Because
And that's why I haven't done like prong collars or e-collars, because I have no idea how to use them, and it would be negligent of me to try to
yes,
do that without, seeking,
correct. And then,
professional
I mean,
advice.
that's just being wise. A lot of people think, because people tend to think punishment based. People naturally go to punishment. Okay. And so when I've talked to people that have either trained their own dog, or tried to e-collar train their own dog, or came from another trainer, sometimes even, it's usually that thought process. If my dog doesn't do it, I'm going to punish him. And it's not that punishment is wrong. It's just dogs don't understand it. So, because what happens is we go from treats and praise and all this positive, but then if you don't do it, I'm going to punish you. And it's this very big gap. You have two extremes, there's no middle. And when we
Yeah.
use pressure, that teaches the middle. Okay. So, like, let's say I'm walking and my dog forgets to sit when I stop, and I tap the collar, the dog goes, "Oh, I forgot." Boom. They're not like,
It's
"Oh
like
my God, what was that for?"
just educating them. Yeah. Okay. That makes
Right.
sense.
Okay. So I look at it, one as a line of communication. It can absolutely be used to correct dogs, and corrections are healthy. Like, dogs correct each other by biting each other. I just posted something on my Instagram right now of a lady getting bit in the face because she got too close to the dog. That's a correction. Okay. So the corrections are all over the place. Like, touching a hot stove, that is technically a correction. It's just from an inanimate object, you know?
Yeah.
So when it comes to your particular case, a lot of this is overstimulation issues.
Okay.
Okay, and you actually said something earlier. You said he's pretty good with his reactivity now, unless it's a more intimidating dog. So then you try to keep his energy low.
Yeah.
Okay, so what looks like to use energy, to me, is overstimulation. Okay,
Okay.
and that's a super common misconception. Is people will say my dog is high energy, they need a lot of exercise, and I go, nope, your dog just needs rules. Okay,
Yeah. Because I can
dogs
take him on as many walks as in a day as possible, and he'll still.
still going, right?
Yeah.
And the difference is, um, so a high energy dog for me would be a working dog. Dogs that the police have, the scent dogs, like, these are dogs that have to do a job, and they're nonstop, right? Like, so Belgian Malinois are known for being crazy because they're meant to work, right? That's its own thing. But the average family pet, when someone says, "I have a very high energy dog," I tell them, no, that's just a dog with no boundaries. So if there's a video on YouTube, you may have seen it, it's very popular. It's like a golden retriever yellow lab. Okay. And she has like a litter of 10 puppies. And they're like maybe 2 months old. Okay. And she walks into the room, and all the puppies swarm her, and they're yipping and barking and jumping on her, right? And you see her start to growl, you see her start to show teeth, you see her start to bite the puppies. And within 30 seconds, they're calm,
Gotcha.
quiet, chill. Okay. And the misconception is with puppies, oh, I have a puppy, they're just being a puppy, right? Puppies bark and they chew and they jump and they bite, right? And they do, if you let them.
Yeah.
Like, in that,
We've
I love that
certainly
video.
ran into that at the dog park a few times, where little puppies, because he's little too, just
Mhm.
like go to him, and he's like, no, I don't. I actually took him to a daycare to try to see, like, because of the overstimulation and boredom, like if he would enjoy that. And he just sat in the corner.
Yeah,
It was too much for him.
like,
So
sure. And
Yeah.
I'll talk about that too, just so as information for you. Because the main thing is people misread things or they misunderstand things. So in that case, we have a mother with 2-month-old puppies, and she goes, enough, and they all shut up.
Yeah.
But people don't do that with their puppies, and that's why puppies grow into dogs with problems, because their other dogs and their litter mates and their mother and their dad or whatever would bite them to set boundaries. So they grow up balanced. They grow up having boundaries. Now that people don't discipline their puppies, they grow up brats. And it just escalates and it becomes frustration because the dog doesn't know what to do. It's not getting its language. It's not being provided consequence. It's not being bitten. So then they end up being, and the most common issue I have that I have coming through my door is overstimulation. And overstimulation is simply a lack of boundaries and consequences. That's all it is. Okay.
Okay.
So, because like for
We
instance,
feel much better than thinking like, oh, my house is too small for him.
no. Yeah.
Because I'll take him to the burbs or to my parents' house, and he's usually good. But I think it's probably just because he's more comfortable here. So
Oh yeah, and you got to think, your home is his territory. Because clients ask all the time, they're like, Jesse, like, how is my dog at daycare? And I go, your dog's great, calm, quiet. They're like, but my dog barks all day at home. I'm like, well, what are they barking at? They're barking out the window when they see people. I'm like, yeah, they're being territorial because
Yep.
it's their home. Because because you're human, you're logical, oh, that's my neighbor. Oh, that's just some dog walker walking dogs. You know that. Your dog doesn't. So what he's doing is he's saying, hey, I see you, and I'm just letting you know I'm here. I'm watching you.
Yeah.
That's all he's doing, right? But the problem is if you're, I think you said but you have a first floor window or something like that.
Yep.
So I'm
Yeah.
sure traffic is like constant.
Yeah. In the
That
city,
becomes a
like
problem.
it's all the time. Yeah.
Yes. So
I'm surprised he hasn't barked this entire call. Like almost every Zoom call I'm on, he's barking. So it's crazy.
I'm sending him,
Yeah.
but yeah. So and all this stuff can be addressed. Okay. So
Okay.
that's the good news. And going back to the daycare thing, I have clients, again, they think their dog's high energy. They send them to daycare and they come back with more energy, and they go, why? The dog is playing all day. I'm like, because there's no off switch, So like, we have a client that just switched to our daycare, and she said, Jesse, it's crazy. When we used to pick up our dog from our old daycare, the dog would be wound up. She's like, we took our dog home from your daycare, went straight to sleep for hours. I said, yes, because we have different forms of exercise. It's not play, play, play. There's play. There's treadmill time, which is focused walking time. There's resting in the kennel while play is happening. So the dogs are quiet as dogs are playing. They're in the same room. They see it happening. They're not barking like, hey, I want to play too. So they're learning I can be calm and quiet when there's high activity. If we've trained the dog, we do duration work where the dog lays on a dog bed and there's dogs moving around. There's puppies playing. There's dogs on treadmills. So it's excited stimulation, but then we have focused exercise as well, right? And then
Yeah.
there's rest time to decompress. When the dog comes out going like, okay, I'm good. I'm not that.
Yeah.
I say send them home tired, not wired, right?
Yeah.
Because overstimulation on top of stimulation creates more stimulation. So um, that's where rules and boundaries come into play. Okay. So in your particular case, the way I would approach this is the first thing we would cover is always the heel exercise. Okay. Now, my style of heel is very strict. Dog's right shoulder to my left hip. If I take 5 steps, the dog takes 5 steps. If I take 1 step, the dog takes 1 step. When I stop, the dog automatically sits. This is with a completely slack leash, and I don't care what the environment is. I don't care if you're at Busy House Park in the middle of summer. I don't care if you're at Petco. I don't care if you're at a dog parade. We want that level of focus, okay? And it sounds super complicated, but it is super easy, okay? Because of the methods that we use. So the reason I do the heel first is because it fixes 70% of problems.
Okay.
Okay. A lot of this, remember earlier when I said you had like a list of 20 things, but it's really like 3 things?
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of
Okay.
that stuff, the theory is it will resolve a lot of that stuff. A
Okay.
lot of that is just frustration. Okay. A lot of that is just frustration. So once he starts to get discipline, once he learns how to turn off, because in order to focus on you to that degree, he has to be very mindful of you. So he has to shut off everything else, which requires work for a dog. So it's like, growing up, my family went to church. So kids in church don't do well, right? Because you have to
Yeah.
sit still and be quiet for a long time, an hour, right? And so
Yeah.
you're like kind of like looking for something to do. So that's like that for dogs. When you get them to just focus, it just resolves a lot of problems. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Questions?
Nope. That makes sense.
And a great video if you'd like to kind of see this in real time. I just posted it. It's a recent one. The dog's name is Rosie,
Rosie. Okay.
and she's a cream retriever. And in her consultation, you can watch 5 minutes of the consultation. She is whining and all over the place. Then we had one class. We've only had one class, and within 12 minutes, I believe, from the actual start of training, she's laying down calm.
Wow.
And we did nothing to target the behavior. We did nothing to like punish her or anything like that. We just simply gave her structure. And
Yeah.
then you see it in real time, like, holy crap, like she just went from this anxious, whiny dog to calm and laying down next to the owner. And nothing's changed other than we applied discipline.
And I could see him being like that. Like he catches on to things really fast. Like before I was just putting his food in his bowl. Now I'm like trying to make him sit and wait and all of that. And so he's like, got it. Okay. Like this is what I need to do. So he catches on. It's more so just me and teaching me what I need to do in order
Right.
to like be a good dog parent.
Right. Yeah. And it's always because dogs don't need us to raise dogs,
Yeah.
right? They raise each other.
Yeah.
Humans, however, because we see dogs as babies or these amiable creatures who could do no harm, right? And they go, no, no, dogs are very complex. They're simple but complex, and once you understand dog for dog, so like with the positive reinforcement, I have nothing against positive reinforcement. It's great for puppies under 6 months. It's great for real basic foundational stuff. It's great for things you want to see again, but it does not work for things you don't want to see again. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when you have a dog that has overstimulation issues, or maybe, is high drive, whatever, food tends to create more energy,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if you're trying to go decrease the energy, well, food's not going to help with that because food creates energy, you
Yeah.
know? So
I just use like treats and food as a distraction, if anything, not to like get him to calm down
sure.
because it does do the opposite. It gets him wired up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a whole nother thing. So with the style of training that I do, we don't need food. One, because you're not a dog trainer. So what I've done is I've cut out all the BS that I know people don't need, right? Because you have your social life, if there's work. Oh, there's a bark.
It would happen at some point. A neighbor. Like I said, I live in a condo. So anytime somebody comes into our building
Oh, sure,
or
yeah.
walks down the street with Goose.
That's a big boy. That's a big bark.
Come here. Come here. Come on. Yep. All right. Come sit with me, please. I know.
So
We're gonna work on it.
so the first thing I cover is the heel, and I go, what does this fix? Okay. And then, you're my feedback. So we'd have the first class. I'd coach you through the exercise. I don't touch the dog anymore. It's all verbal instruction, but I am present with you. Okay. So I'm coaching you through it, and you learn so much more now because I already know how to train dogs. I already know how to work through problems. You don't.
Yeah.
So that's a big plus to it. The first class is always the hardest class because you don't know what's going on. But once you understand the concept, everything after that is super easy. Okay. The second class, you show up, how to go, what's the improvements we saw, what has not improved, right? There's going to be Uh-oh, did we disconnect here?
Okay, I can see you now.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Did you hear that last bit?
I you started talking about the second class.
Okay, so the second class, you tell me what's working, what's not working, what's gotten better, what's not gotten better. There are things that are its own separate context. Um, did I like? I think I remember reading about resource guarding. Is that correct?
Yes, in certain cases, yes.
So that is a separate thing. Okay, discipline would most likely not help that. Okay,
Okay.
but we can cover that. That's not a problem. I would think the heel would cover any kind of like the overstimulated, barky, um, the his energy on the leash and all that stuff. That's the stuff it will help address. Okay, but like resource guarding, that's something where we would have to either teach them how to release on command, or teach them, like, let's say, because I think it was more so towards dogs and occasionally towards you.
Yeah, and certain treats. Well, yeah, for with other dogs, it's everything. With me, it would be certain treats.
Gotcha.
If I got too close to his crate and he had it in there,
Oh, sure,
he's
sure, sure.
constantly hiding food around the house. So,
Yeah. So then, I would teach you things so that, um, because he's being very primal, right, in that behavior, and I'm not against that behavior. Like my Chihuahua used to hide stuff all over the place too. Um, but it's like if you don't know there's something underneath the cushion, that's a problem, right?
yeah,
So, we cover that. I show you how to prevent it, but then also how to address it should something happen. Uh, when it comes to resource guarding with dogs, I can't make him share, right? That's more so a human concept. Some dogs can share. But if he's a resource guarder, like for instance, I was talking to a client and his dog will guard tennis balls at the dog park. And I told him, if that's the case when you're at the dog park, we just make tennis balls off limits,
yeah,
right? And then the dog, so if the dog cannot have a tennis ball, then there's nothing to guard. Okay. But then he was like, well, what about if I want to play fetch with my dog at like the park by ourselves? I said, that's fine. That's a completely separate context. But at the dog park where there's other dogs, that's a potential fight. We just
yeah.
prevent that from happening. Okay. So, in terms of like how long this would take and like, length of time and cost, it really just comes down to how much you want to, address and how much you want to, how well trained of a dog do you want. So you're like in the 6, 9 to 12 week range in terms of program length. The way I approach things is I really don't teach anything you're not going to use or that isn't going to benefit you. So, um, if I'm remembering correctly, aside of the barking and overstimulation stuff and the resource guarding, um, the escaping stuff, the one thing would be is I just never recommend people leave their dogs unattended in a yard, because one, people steal dogs, but then two, once your dog has learned how to escape, they're going to escape, and they just get faster and faster each time. Um, and Now, can we correct the behavior? We can, but if he's unattended and he doesn't see you out there, it's like kids, where they're like, hey, you can't watch TV, and you leave the room, they're going
Yeah.
to try to watch TV, right? So it's
Yeah.
the same with dogs. So unless you have a camera where you can watch him while he's outside and you can correct him and stuff, I always just tell people don't leave your dog unattended, in that kind of scenario.
Yeah.
Um, is the way I would go about this is if we did the 6 classes, 2 classes on the heel. We see what does that fix, and then you're of course my feedback. All the other stuff is simple because it's all behavior stuff. Okay. So
Mhm.
growing up, I was raised old school. I was spanked. So like if I talk back to my mom, if I didn't do my homework or if I didn't do my chores, I got spanked for all those things.
Mhm.
Right. So for dogs, it's very similar. So like if a puppy were to jump on him, bark at him, or try to mount him, he would bite, bite, bite as a correction, right?
Mhm.
Not to be aggressive, but to say like, hey, back off. So it's one consequence for a number of things that puppy may do that he doesn't like.
Mhm.
So that's what makes behavior easy. So obedience is do this. Behavior is don't do this.
Okay.
Okay. And what makes behavior easy is aversives are meant to stop behaviors. You don't need to teach the dog to not bark, as a skill. We just correct the barking, and the dog goes, all right, if I don't want to be corrected, I don't bark. Okay.
Gotcha.
So, but
Yeah.
to teach the dog how to sit and how to come when called and all that, those are skills. We have to teach that, right? So once you understand how to correct behavior, it's easy. Oh, he's trying to counter surf. Correct. Oh, he's barking out the window. Correct. Oh, he's, barking at someone in the car. Correct. Right? Because I don't care what he does. I just don't want him to do that. You know,
Yeah.
obedience trainers or like positive trainers make it more complicated. Like, for instance, let's say jumping on people. They would say, teach your dog to sit so they don't jump on people. Right? And I go, or just teach the dog not to jump on people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, it's simple, right? Because I don't care what the dog does, just don't jump. Right?
Yeah.
Teaching the sit adds more work to the process. And a lot of times when you correct the jumping, dogs sit anyways.
Okay.
Like as default, like almost all
Yeah.
the time when we get a dog that jumps and we correct them, they sit.
Yeah.
So so once you understand that, that's like a class in itself. Okay. And where I'd go over the corrections and stuff like that. So that's one class. The resource guarding is something that would take time.
Okay.
When it comes to stuff where, like, let's say he has like a piece of chocolate, right? And you're like, oh crap, buddy, you can't have that chocolate, it's dangerous.
Yeah.
You can't just reach for it because he might guard it, right?
Yeah.
That we would need to teach a formal release because there's risk to you. Okay, so
Yep.
technically that's behavior, right? That's technically behavior, resource guarding. Um, but if you try to approach that behavior with the just don't do that, it's not going to be like in a situation like that where it's like, crap, I need you to surrender that. We need to teach the dog how to formally release things. But then the rest like would be teaching them to not assume that things on the ground are his, right?
Yep.
So like if I'm dropping
Especially
food on the
walking in the
ground,
city. Yep.
yeah,
He picked up a
chicken bone,
chicken bone one time. Yep.
yep, hit it, yep. So
I was like panicking. I was like, get it out. And yeah, he definitely tests me.
yes, so that's something because people always teach to leave it, right?
Hmm.
But the problem again is then you always have to say leave it. I
For
just want the
everything.
dog to not pick up stuff off the ground, period.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. So that's easier. I
Well,
don't
I'm
even
glad
need
that there's, oh, no, I did it again.
other we disconnect.
Oh, I think I'm back.
All right. Yeah,
Sorry,
if
I
that
had
happens, you can
terrible
log out.
Wi-Fi.
No, you're fine. Oh yeah. So for the resource for the picking stuff off the ground, I just teach as a default. All that stuff is off limits. There's an automatic correction if you do that. So then
Great.
you're not constantly having to worry about what's on the floor and stuff like that. If he were to happen to get something, that's where we teach the formal release. That does take time to teach. Okay, so when it comes to something like that, I don't want you to think that at the end of the program your dog will have a reliable out. You have to take time to practice that. But
Okay.
the tools that I teach you with will get you a reliable out. You just have to commit the time to it. Okay.
Okay.
But the picking up stuff off the ground, like just like preventing that, is the easiest part. Okay. So that's a class in itself. I mean, it's pretty straightforward once you understand these concepts, which leaves 2 classes if you did like the 6-week program, right? So that's 2 on heal, 2 on resource guarding, and the behavior combined. So then I'd most likely suggest we work on recall, which is come when called, pending everything's going smoothly, because come when called is the most important command your dog needs to know, because that's what's going to make him return to you. Okay, and that's typically 2 classes in itself as well. And then, so that's like the bare bones of, just addressing what you're needing. Now, if you're wanting more control, the way the programs work is with the 6-week, imagine it as like I walk my dog and we go to the dog park, right? So I want to get my dog to come back and not have my dog pull my arm off. The 9-week program is that stuff. Plus, like maybe you want to go to a restaurant with your dog and like have them not move for a bit while you have your dinner or whatever. And then the 12-week program is I do all of that. Plus I go hiking and we go to the dog beach. My dog's going to be off leash in unenclosed areas. Then that's the full off leash control. Okay. So the 6-week, real basic stuff, walking on a leash and common called up to off leash. You just have to do the homework plus the simple behavior stuff. Okay. The 9-week gives more control and the 12-week gives the most control. So whatever you decide to go with, it doesn't matter to me, okay? But at minimum, to address your issues with Goose here, if I'm remembering everything correctly, you should be fine with just the 6 classes, okay? Because it's just a lot of overstimulation stuff outside of the resource guarding, which also is contact space, right? If there's nothing to guard, we're not going to see that behavior. So it's, in the home, like I have you change a few things so that he doesn't, catch you by surprise by hiding stuff under the couch or something. But then also in the formal release and then preventing problems at like, parks with other dogs.
Okay. Yeah, I think no, that makes sense. I think for the two of us, it's just us two, and he kind of goes with me everywhere, especially during the pandemic, as much as he can. So like I've tried to take him to the dog beach and stuff like that and dog park. So I think like along, the longer training, it's okay, would probably be best for our lifestyle, just because it's not just like, it's not just at home. I would love to get him out more. It's just right now he is either not interested or is reactive. So but yeah, that like this, it all makes sense to me. I'm glad that the barking is, especially because I am working from home, it has been the most challenging. So if that's the easiest fix, that makes me very happy, and everything else, yeah.
Does he have any separation anxiety?
Yes. Okay. Absolutely.
All right. So that
and that was even before me. When they were transporting him to bring him to my place, they had him in a crate in the back of the car. And they had to take him out of the crate and hold him because he was yelping and just like needed to be with someone. So but
it made it worse, by the way.
Probably.
Yeah.
But I've now, like, of course during the pandemic it's been harder, but I like go to the gym, I put him in the crate, I put some like music on in the background so that hopefully he doesn't hear people walking by my window. But outside of that, like I've been I haven't really, like yesterday I went and gave blood for like an hour and a half. He did his crate. He was quiet by the time I got home, but he's very energized. The whole sitting in his crate until I let him out is not a thing. It's as soon as I open that door, he runs out and he's excited. So
okay. So that definitely, I know you're already leaning towards the longer program already, but definitely longer is better because that's another thing we have to address. So worst case scenario with the separation anxiety is he may need a bark collar. Keep him quiet on.
Here. Nope. And I think I watched one of the other videos on like toys, like certain toys, like stuffed animals are more so because people like do it because like their dogs are their babies, but he really does not play with anything besides stuffed animals. So yeah, there's just a lot that like I ultimately like because I'm
I said that I don't care about that stuff.
Oh, okay.
So when I say baby, human babies have no motor skills and are not self-aware. Okay, so like my aunt, she had years and years ago, she had her first baby, whatever, and she was carrying the baby, and the baby ripped the earring out of her ear.
Oh.
She couldn't correct the baby. She was pissed, but
Yeah.
that was her fault for
She's a
wearing earrings around the baby, right?
yeah.
Um, so that's the problem: is people treat dogs as if they have no concept of what they can and can't do, and they absolutely do. You know,
Gotcha.
so I don't care what people do. I don't care if people sleep in the bed with the dog. I don't care if they're on the couch with the dog. All that stuff. That stuff doesn't matter. What does matter is
Awesome.
consequence.
Okay.
Okay. Now, let's say with the separation anxiety, because that's a little bit different. Let's say he's always on your lap 24/7, right? That we would have that's obviously a big factor of separation anxiety. Is that if he can't be away from you for a second, like that's gonna pose a problem when you leave, right? So stuff like that does matter, but in most cases, as long as people just discipline their dog, it really doesn't. Okay. Um,
Okay.
so worst case scenario would be when you leave, he may need a bark collar, and the bark collar will essentially correct him for barking automatically, but it helps put dogs in a calmer state of mind. So
Okay.
like we had a really bad separation anxiety case that came a few months ago, and literally they dropped the dog off as I was about to eat dinner. I put the dog in the kennel and would just step like 10 feet away. The dog sounded like it was dying. Okay.
Yeah. When
And
as soon as I step out the door and he hears the lock, it's like yeah, like howling and
yeah,
I've asked my neighbors, I'm like, I'm really sorry. I hope you don't hear him, but yeah,
yeah,
it gets a little out of hand.
yeah. So having a bark collar not only corrects the behavior, but also the dog just learns like, all right, well, I can't bark anyway, so like just chill. Okay. Um, so that's one that we'll have to set up a game plan for. And I have exercises so that you can work around the bar collar. Um, so worst case scenario, because one of the most common questions I get is when does the e-collar go away? And in my book, when you need it, it doesn't, right? So like if you walk him, if he's going to be off leash at the park, if you were to give him a high value bone and you don't want to have to deal with resource guarding, you have the collar on because that gives you control.
Yeah.
Inside the home, uh, there's other ways of correcting Goose that aren't e-collar based, so you're not having to become dependent on it 24/7.
Okay.
Because I'll give you those options. Um, but the reason why it doesn't go away is because dogs are opportunistic creatures. All animals are. So like for humans, the most common thing that we um, how do you say blow off is the speed limit when we are on the expressway. Most people speed,
Yeah.
right? And when they see a squad car, everybody slows down. And then once they pass a squad car, everybody speeds up again, right? So that's called opportunistic behavior because when there's no cop around, there's no threat of consequence. So I
Yeah.
look at the e-collar as a cop on a collar, right? If I know I'm going to need control, I have it present. And it's not that you're always using it. Once you've done your training, he'll have the skill set. But it's like, what happens if like he's out at the park and someone blows up a firework and it scares him?
Yeah.
Now your dog is running in fear. And that's not about obedience in the moment. That's your dog running for its life. And so now we have to override the fear with the e-collar to make the dog return. And these are very real things that do happen. So the e-collar is just like in case something happens, I'm not worried about am I going to have control on or off leash. Okay. In the house, if he's making great progress and he's calm and 90% of the barking is gone and he's chilling, he's not overstimulated, then we're good. He doesn't need it in the house. And that last 10%, we can use a different method to correct. Um, but because of that, with the bark collar and the separation anxiety, what makes it really difficult is that it happens when you're gone, right? So
Mhm.
then the bark collar is there to correct them because you're not physically there to do so.
Yeah.
So then, whether or not he progresses past the bark collar, I don't know. I've had it happen. I've also had dogs that, how do you say, always needed it because they were just really, really bad separation anxiety cases. But I
Mhm.
don't know how it's going to work out. I just know that the bar collar is most likely going to come into play uh, because it's the only way to correct him when you're gone. Okay.
Gotcha.
How much does Goose weigh?
I think about 18 pounds last time.
Okay. So the collar, and Maria will send you this information,
Okay.
but the collar I'd recommend for you is for 35-pound dogs and under. It's a half-mile range, fully waterproof system. Um, it what was the last thing I was saying? Fully waterproof system, half-mile range. Oh, it runs about 237-ish with tax. Um, and they last for years. I mean, you can find some that are cheaper than that, but you get what you pay for when it comes to these tools. So we'll send you the make and model that we recommend that you purchase. You can get them on Amazon. I suggest that you read your manual, that you fiddle with the collar. Like, don't use it on them or anything like that, but just fiddle with it. Make sure it's working properly. If anything seems weird, like the numbers, because it's an LED screen, so the numbers go up in increments of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way to 127. And if it starts jumping all over the place, you have a lemon, you're going to want to exchange that. Okay.
Got it. Okay.
And then you just let us know, hey, I got a lemon, I need more time. We just push you back a week, no problem.
Okay.
I'll also send you videos to watch to prep you for the lesson so that when you show up, we just jump straight into the training. And we don't waste time like talking about stuff that you can learn from a 5-minute video. Okay.
Cool.
In regards to what an e-collar is, it's you're not electrocuting Goose. It's not electricity. It's not like a taser. It's a miniaturized TENS unit. They use the technology on humans. They use a lot in sports rehabilitation therapy. They use it in chiropractic offices and physical therapist offices.
I think I've had it for like back stuff before.
Yeah, exactly. That's the most common thing it's used for. You can buy them at Walgreens down in the back section. So it's just a muscle contraction that only moves the muscle that it's making contact with. And then we always start low and then work our way up, much like when you had it done on your back. They probably said, tell us when it becomes too much, right? And then you said, oh, right there. And then they lowered it and they let the machine do its job. Very similar to the way we train dogs with it as well. Okay. Any other questions or concerns?
No, I think it was just that was my next question was if I needed to research like e-collars or if you guys would send them over and or if it was like included if I needed to pay for them separately. So yeah, if she's going to send that over, that's perfect.
Yeah, so the e-collar you do purchase separate from the training program, but she'll send you the name and the make and model
Okay.
that I suggest you get. And then if anything else pops up, feel free to reach out and let us know. Maria will get in contact with you and handle the accounting, send you a contract and all that stuff and the scheduling. Don't worry if she's doesn't get back to you immediately. We've had a lot of consultation requests coming through and a lot of people booking. So trying to keep up with everybody. Because
there are a lot of resolutions for the new year.
yeah, a lot of resolutions, right? Train my dog.
Yeah.
So if anything pops up, let us know. Otherwise, nothing out of the ordinary here. Pretty common stuff in my book. Okay.
Okay. Fantastic. It's good to hear. But yeah, no, he's a good dog, and I know that but it's more so me and teaching me. So, and especially if we have other fosters later on, not anytime soon because he's clearly not ready for it. I want to be prepared. So
yeah, we'll get you on the right track. Okay.
Cool. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Take care.
You too. Bye.